All right. So I am just going to explain a few concepts that we've gone over in class. As soon as I find the right screen here we go. So we've been calculating how to figure out how much you might make on an investment. And we do that with either the simple interest formula or the compound interest formula. But there's also a separate little step that we need to calculate, which basically is how much is the bank going to charge you for making that investment. And then we look at a few other things such as rate of return and how long it might take for your investment to double. So I'm just going to scroll down to our first question. So you'll see here on the screen, there are all of the important formulas that you're going to need. There's one other actually that's not there, but you'll see it when we get there. I'll show you really quick. And I'm going to show you an alternative way of calculating it anyway, so it won't really matter if it's not on the screen. But those are basically the main formulas that you are going to need. So we're going to go through the first example together. So the first example says a certain bank charges 0.7% of the present value, which is the principal, for managing a mutual fund. The mutual fund had a present value of 4,500 and earned 7.6% interest in 1 year. What was the interest in 1 year? So, as I said, when we're calculating the interest on these investments, you are going to use either the simple interest formula or the compound interest formula. We've reviewed both. And basically, the way that you know which of the two you're going to use is if it doesn't say the word compounded, you're not going to use the compound interest formula. So nowhere in here does it say compounded. So we are just using the simple interest formula. So that is our I equals PRT. We don't need the triangle that I showed you guys for this because the triangle only helps you when rearranging the formula. We're just looking for the interest, which means we could just use this very simple I equals PRT formula. And the PRT just refers to taking the principal amount, which is 4,500, and timesing it by the rate. Now, there's two rates in this question. We want the rate in which they are earning on their investment here because it says interest earned, right? So 4,500 times 0.076 times the length of the term, which is 1 year. So 4,500 times 0.076 times 1, you plug that into your calculator and you should get $342. Then it says, how much money did the bank charge for managing the account or managing the money? So in that first sentence, it said that they charge 0.7% of the present value. So 0.7% of the present value. So 0.7%. You want to change that to its decimal form. Yes, I know it already has a decimal, but you want to change it to its decimal form. So you divide by 100, which is 0.007, and then you times by the principal amount, which is 4,500. When you do that, you get an answer of 3150. And then the next question says, how much money did the investor actually earn? So what was their return on the investment? That's another way of saying that. And the way that you calculate that is you actually find the difference in the two numbers that we just calculated. So the interest earned was 342. The bank charged them 3150. So the difference between those two amounts is going to tell me what the return on the investment was, how much they actually earned. And when you subtract that, you get 310.50. Now, the next part says what was the rate of return? So that's this formula here. Notice that it says interest minus charges. Well, that's what we just did. So basically, it's the return divided by the present value or the principal. So we just calculated that the return is 310.50. And the principal amount that they invested, of course, was that 4,500. So 310.50 divided by 4,500, and you get 0.069. Which of course we want, like it says here, times by 100, we want it as a percent, so 6.9%. Okay, so that's one example. The next one, I don't think I'll go through it all with you because it is another simple interest example. So I think I'll just explain the process. So for the first question, I'll read the question first. So it says a bank charges 0.4% fee for the present value for managing a savings account. 2,300 was initially put in the savings account, and the account earned 2.2% annually for 3 years. So again, nowhere does it say the word compounded. So that tells you that you're doing the simple interest formula. So for the first question here, you're just doing your I equals PRT and interest earned. So you use the rate for which you're going to earn interest. So I equals PRT times those three things together. So, right, P times R times T. How much money did the bank charge? That's where we use this percent here. So again, just make sure that you convert it to its decimal form. I know it kind of looks like it already is, but I swear it isn't. So you have to divide by 100 first. So you'd actually do 0.004 times the principal amount. And then how much money did the investor actually earn? That's where you subtract the two. So what the interest on the investment was, subtract the amount for managing, the amount the bank charges, and then your rate of return, what they actually earned. So your answer in C divided by the investment. So like I said, not going to go over that one again, just because it is another simple interest. Question 3 is a compound interest question, but it is an easy example of a compound interest question. One thing that is missing, if you're trying this at home, they forgot to tell you the principal amount being invested. So I just decided that that was going to be $3,600. You will need that. um, yeah, so like I said, I'm going to do question 4 just because it's a bit harder. So this one is a compound interest question. So a bank charges 1.2% of the present value of the GIC to manage the GIC. An investor invests 40,000 in the GIC for 2 years. The GIC earns 3.2% annually, compounded semi-annually. So because it says compounded, we're going to use the compound interest formula. So A equals 40,000. Now, in class, we actually found, so depending on what formula you're using, you might know this as 1 plus r divided by n. We actually found r divided by n in class first before we plugged it in. We had actually called that I, little I. So our rate is 0.032, and it's compounded semi-annually, so that's twice a year. So 0.032 divided by 2, which is 0.016. Okay, and then if you remember, we also found the other part, so our NT before we plugged it into the formula, and that was the compounded twice a year for 2 years, which equals 4. So in our formula here, it would be 1 plus 0.016, which is 1.016, and it's going to be to the power of NT, which is 4. In your calculator, you do 1.016 to the power of 4. Then once you have an answer, you times that by 40,000. And you should get 42,622. Oh, shoot. $622.10. Now, the question's asking for how much interest. So what was the interest earned on this investment? The 42,622.10 is the total amount of the investment earned. And I'm still going to rewrite that because it still doesn't look very nice. There. Okay. So as I said, this is the total amount of the investment. We want just the interest. So you'd have to take the total amount of the investment and subtract the original investment to know how much was just in interest alone. So that's 2,622.10. So that's the amount of interest that was earned on this account. Now, as I said, I was going to show you another way that you can do this. So I'm just going to pop into another screen. Actually, I'm going to pop into our team on Teams. and show you the link. So on our team on Teams, you pop in and I posted a link. So this is an online compound interest calculator, and you literally just have to type in all of the amounts. So it says initial investment, that is our principal amount. So that's 40,000. Regular addition, this would be if you're going to add money to it, but they don't say anything about adding money, so we're going to leave that at 0. The interest rate for this question was 3.2. And you don't even have to convert it to its decimal form. You just type it right in as is. How often is it compounded? Semi-annually. And for how many years? 2 years. Click calculate. Tells you all that. So we did all those steps in that formula, and we could have just plugged it in here. So you guys are allowed to use this online calculator. So it tells you right away that the total interest earned is 2,622. I'm going to pop back in. So we have that as our answer anyway. We just did a lot of work to get it. And then the next part, how much money did the bank charge for managing the account? This particular calculation is going to be the same, whether it's compound interest or simple interest. So that makes it nice and easy. That's just where we take the charge percentage. That's just where we take the charge percentage. So 1.2% of whatever was invested. So 1.2% is 0.012, and we times that by the principal amount, which is 40,000. And you should get an answer of 480. What was the return on the investment? That's where we take the interest that was actually earned and we subtract the charges that the bank. So 2,142.10 is the return of the investment. So then what was the rate of return? Well, we take our return that we just calculated in C and we divide by the original investment. So before I continue, you'll notice that basically your steps from B, C, and D, basically the same, whether it's compound interest or simple interest. The only thing that's different is how you calculate A. So if it's simple interest, it's just your I equals PRT. If it's compound interest, you can either do the formula if you're good at it and you're quick with it, or you can plug it into that online calculator that I just showed you. Now, going back to the rate of return. So we take our return, we divide by the original investment. We get 0.053, which of course is 5.3%. And then how long would it take for the investment to double in value? This is something called the rule of 72. So you just do 72, divide it by the earned interest rate. So by the 3.2. You don't convert it to a decimal, just 3.2. So 72 divided by 3.2 is 22.5. So it would take approximately 22.5 years before their investment doubles. And if you wanted to check it, you could try plugging that into the formula and just make sure that the amount you get is at least double of the amount you invested. And you can plug it into the online formula to calculate the same thing. So as I said, it's pretty straightforward. So you will either have a simple interest for calculating A or a compound interest for calculating A. And then from there, your steps B, C, D, and sometimes E, if it's asked, will all be the same.